What we got here? Oh.
These are 2 black belts, by the way, Jeremy.
Oh, wow.
This is high quality jiu-jitsu.
Which one do you think is the more experienced competitor?
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to guess and say it's the not the guy spazzing out.
I love the big Gracie Baja stamp on this back, too.
Man.
Homegrown
He is
McDojo.
That's the bad part, right? Is like you brand and then you expand and then you're like, oh.
It gets diluted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't have. I bet that guy's a handful, though. My goodness.
I probably wouldn't enjoy this match.
No.
You can see the other guys just like, are we doing jiu-jitsu here or are we doing sumo wrestling?
Oh, my God.
Like, this has got to be at least Masters 2.
He looks legit.
Oh, yeah. He did the smart thing. Pull guard.
As per protocol. Go ahead and do. Wow.
Then this happens.
How did he get on top? That shouldn't have happened.
Some weird combination of grips and pulling and pushing.
What in the hell is that guy?
And then
Where
it looks
did this
like.
come from? How did
So I spent a lot of time just searching the internet for stuff. And,
you found it? Yeah.
You'd be surprised what you find in the dark web.
Oh my God.
I'd be interested to know what, like where this was exactly.
Yeah, it's intense.
It's in high school or something.
Yeah, so that's a Swain logo on the mats, right? Where's that? I can't see from this phone. Wow, that's great posture.
It is. He's got a plan, though.
Oh, is he going to choke a guy inside his guard? Oh, he's
No,
going to
he's
slam
just
him.
going to slam him.
Here we go. See, that should be it, right?
Oh, my God. Well, I guess he completed his black belt kata and got his belt.
Yes.
Jeez. Wow.
You see the headbutt? That was my favorite part.
See, as the ref, I would have probably DQ'd this guy by now because it feels like that. He was headbutting and like throwing elbows and all kinds of stuff.
Slap shots.
Man. Somebody's dad did not hug them enough.
Welcome to another episode of Jiu-Jitsu by the Train Tracks. We got a super special guest with us today. My professor, all of our professor, if we're being honest. Okay,
Say it
Jeremy
right. Say
Akin,
it right.
everybody.
Yes, that's a lot of rage in that.
Yeah, that's always my favorite whenever you see somebody spaz out, but you never expect to see a black belt do it.
You're going to see it more and more, as more and more gyms get diluted. And
Yeah.
You get 15 removed from somebody who actually cared about jiu-jitsu.
It's a sad day when you see that. I just don't want anybody to see that and think, oh yeah, this is what jiu-jitsu looks like. No. I can do much better, I promise you.
I remember when I was, I think I was a wider blue belt, and we just got in training, and I was talking to Louise, and I was like, man, how are you going to handle when jiu-jitsu gets watered down? I remember him looking at me, he's like, no, man, it'll never get watered down because there's competitions. And I was like, Louise, it's everything that comes to America gets watered down and exploited until someone makes money on it. I was like, it's just a matter of time. Like, thanks for your culture. Now we'll bastardize it and cash in. And that's, kind of what happened. I remember him like, no, man, there's competitions. How could this? I'm like, well, eventually everyone in the competitions will be the same, and there'll be like bullshit competitions that don't matter.
Yeah.
Which is what's happening. You get like everybody wants to run a tournament now and they make up their own rules, and it's like, Barry's barnyard of MMA out there, fighting to the death, that dude or whatever.
Now, the number one question I wanted to ask Jeremy is, not me personally. This is actually more of a James thing, but I'm okay.
He's going to blame everything on me if it goes wrong.
We just want to know if you're related to Chris Jericho. Have you heard this before?
Have
you heard this?
Yeah, we're.
Are you serious? You've never met or
By the
seen?
way, James also picked this picture of him.
Specifically that picture.
Oh yeah, no, that I get. Yeah,
That's what I see every time
yeah.
I see you.
No, I don't blame you. Yeah, I wish I saw that every time. I mean, that's intense.
Well, wasn't his thing like the lion? Didn't he have a lion for his thing? And then that was like the Brentwood Jiu-Jitsu.
I think so. I think it was his submission move or something like that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
that's
uncanny.
he also
Yeah.
plays music too. Like he's
there you go,
he's
yeah.
a legit musician.
No kidding.
We just
Yeah.
wanted to get to the like concrete issues here in
Yeah,
Jiu-Jitsu.
we're
This-
solving
I know
them
this
today.
is one
Honestly,
of them.
I hate to admit this, but we're not actually related. I wish
We'll make a fan
that I know
page.
of. That I know of.
We're going to make a fan page, and we're going to get him to find you, and we'll see if he says the same thing.
I'll check my 23andMe profile, and I'll see. I'll get to the bottom of it, that dude or whatever.
It is crazy how the sports evolved and the different takes, different gyms, kind of the different paths they take when it comes to training their,
Yeah.
competitors, and what a jiu-jitsu school looks like versus what a MMA school looks like that has jiu-jitsu competitors.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't focus on MMA at all. And, I've had students like, oh man, I want to take a fight. I'm like, well, let me know, because, it's a vastly different training regimen. It's like people think they're just going to like go from like gi jiu-jitsu and just get a fight. And I mean, you'll win like some amateur fights that way, but I mean, it's a different animal. It's like a different sport now, and like when I came up, the only people that knew jiu-jitsu were jiu-jitsu guys. So they were doing the same jiu-jitsu. But now you have like generations of MMA guys that are also really skilled at jiu-jitsu, especially using it in MMA. And, it's like, it's a completely different animal. And I think it's kind of naive to be like, oh, I'm just going to take the gi off, jump in like a pro level MMA fight and like triangle this guy, And it's, an amateur, it still happens because, you get a lot of people in there that don't belong there. But like, you watch like pro level MMA and it's like, it's a completely different animal now.
It's that whole idea of a specialist, right? A perfect example, Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. You got to see what a pure specialist could do.
Yeah, because it's not about knowing techniques. It's about tactics, it's strategy. Fighting is strategies. So it's like at the highest level, Mayweather made a career off winning the game of boxing, not actually fighting. And someone like Conor McGregor, I'm sure hits hard. He's got decent head movement for a guy who's, not solely a boxer, but he's not going to win the ref's decision. He doesn't know how to play the ring. He doesn't understand the game of boxing, and gi jiu-jitsu is the same way. It's like, I tell my guys all the time, it's like, it's not always the best jiu-jitsu that wins a match. It's like the smartest competitor. Just knowing how to play the out of bounds is a skill. And, when you're like, oh, man, submission's all that matters. I'm going to go out on my shield. You're going to lose to a guy who knows the rules and is not trying to submit you. He's just trying to get to the next round. And MMA is the same way. It's like the amount of energy it takes to get a submission on someone who's that athletic, that conditioned, that sweaty, in such a short amount of time is a waste of energy. You're better off just taking them down, scoring the takedown, holding them down, waiting the next round, do it again. So it's like the tactics and strategies are where high-level fights are won and lost. And I think people early on don't understand that. It's like, I want to see, knockouts and like, flying
You get your
stuff
UFC
and submission.
fans.
Yeah.
Well, it's because of what you grow up seeing. I think is fighting. Like you see people in the street fighting, you want to see like, oh, that guy got knocked out. That's amazing. Well, guess what? That's in the heat of the moment. That's all the wrong conditions being met perfectly.
Yeah.
So
and that's typically unskilled fighters. It's like, any skill set. You take me out on a golf course, and you don't have to be good to be better at golf than me because I'm starting at such a. I mean, I'll be lucky if I can hit the ball. So it's like you might look like a pro and you've played like a year, but you take that guy who's played a year and put him in against an actual pro, and it looks ridiculous.
right.
One guy had a good day at the driving range. And he thinks he's Tiger Woods all of a sudden.
I hit the ball and it
I
went
made
Times
contact
Street.
9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
So Jeremy was made famous not long ago by the interwebs with this special meme that they just cropped over his face with.
Yeah.
I was I was a doubter when Jeff told me that that's you. I was like, it's not Jeremy.
Yeah, that's from I think the first time I had Lucas Lepre in for a seminar. That was probably like 10 years ago, or like maybe 9 years ago, and we had just gotten the mats and everything. I'd been open maybe like a year in that location, and I was like, man, I was so excited, and I had all these people like messaging me, man, where'd you get these white mats? Because at the time you couldn't buy white mats, because I remember the mat company's like, no one is gonna ever want white mats. They were real. Yeah, they were ahead of the game there, but
they didn't stay in business long.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I finally convinced them to, because they had ADCC that year, and they had the white mats, and I was like, it was Zebra, and I was like, hey, I want those mats. Like, oh, we don't sell them. And I was like, well,
you make them.
Literally just sponsored an event with your name all over the white mats that you have. So that was one off for ADCC, and I finally got them to, they're actually beige, not white, but I got them to like whatever vinyl they had left over to make as many mats as they could and ship them to me, which like took like a year to get the mats. And then I was so proud of my mats and everything, and then this somebody covered me up with was that Gandalf?
It is pretty clever though.
Yeah,
it is.
If you're an LOTR
I've seen
fan.
that a lot of places.
Yeah, that's there I am, immortalized.
It's too bad they can't tell it's you though.
I know.
We know.
For the record, he did in fact pass. So I don't know if you know who Lucas Lepre is, but yeah.
Definitely.
He did, yeah.
Well, that's actually brings me to one of the first questions I wanted to ask you was, and I know Lucas Lepre plays a major role in influencing your jiu-jitsu. Out of like, if you could pick any two, would Lucas Lepre be one of them, and if so, who would the other be?
Influences or like people I enjoy watching?
Oh,
so as a fan, there's jiu-jitsu that I really love, but doesn't really have its, like, that's not in my game as much. And then there's people that have influenced my game just for body type and because I think that your personality influences your jiu-jitsu more than anything else. So like Lucas, for example, is very methodical. Like, he's very calm, very even keel personality as far as every time I've been around him. And his jiu-jitsu is the same way. It's like very calm, very tight. It's not flashy. He's not flying around, even though he's like a really good athlete. He doesn't necessarily have to use it much. Whereas I'm like a lot more emotional. I'm like more intense. So I struggle, even though like I'm a huge fan of his jiu-jitsu, and I would wish his jiu-jitsu on a lot of my students, but I am like real aggressive, and like I like to move a lot more than I probably should. So his jiu-jitsu didn't really influence like my basic jiu-jitsu. I've tried, but it's so I would say influences. Let's see. I would say Rickson. It was probably my first influence. I don't know whether it's like Rickson or the myth of Rickson. The stories of Rickson influenced me a lot.
The movie Choke, right? I mean,
it's got to be the myth.
Every martial artist who started in jiu-jitsu, within the past 20 years has probably seen that documentary.
Oh yeah, it's like the holy grail of jiu-jitsu. And I was fortunate enough to be able to like go to some seminars and learn from Rickson. But yeah, I would say he was a huge influence. There wasn't a ton of film to study, and I love to study film. So it sucks that a lot of the only footage of Rickson is in Valley Trudeau and MMA. So it was like, I wish there was more gi jiu-jitsu footage of him in his prime, or just no gi, other than just like random classes of him rolling. But yeah, his and we're like close to the same size. So like, I try to have influences realistic. For me to like imitate Bushesha it's just not going to work, right? So
yeah, that's a good point. That's what I try to pass on to my students as well. It's just like jiu-jitsu is self-discovery in a lot of ways, and self-acceptance. You can see guys of all body types, ages, succeed in this sport by staying true to who they are and what they're capable of.
Yeah, I struggle with that myself, trying to find exactly who is a good mirror or a good match for myself being blue belt, just because, I see someone with a similar body type, but just because I've got that body type doesn't mean I have that stamina, flexibility,
it's
that
huge.
strength level. There's a lot of factors that play into that.
Yeah, when I think about my influences, ironically, one of my influences is a guy I've never trained with, but I've studied a ton of film of, is Michael Lange. And Lange's guard is movement, because I was really flexible, so like a lot of the jiu-jitsu that he used was easy for me to plug and play, and it was always a struggle because as an instructor I would teach my game and no one had any success with it, and I'm like, why don't you just play spider guard all the time? The professor, he stacks me. Well, they just don't get stacked, or just better. You kind of see back and walk your shoulders away and like, oh, it hurts. But like, I'd love to train with Lange at some point, but it was like someone I've trained with a lot of great black belts, and everybody's influenced me to some degree. I think I was a guard. I would consider myself a guard player probably until black belt. Like I never really thought about passing as much, like, because I would sweep, and then after a sweep's a different type of passing. Like people talk about Bernardo Freia's over-under, and they're like, man, can you show me that? I'm like, yeah, but you have to start with sweeping from deep half, so you start on the hips. Like, show me footage of him letting people pull guard, tangle him up in spider guard, and then passing. So once again, we go into tactics.
Yeah.
Bernardo pulled, swept from deep half, came up in an over-under pass. But if you want to see like the over-under pass done differently than Murillo Santana, is a better study on how to get to the over-under pass instead of sweeping to it, right?
Like from other guards.
Yeah, and like
I'm
not a deep half guy, so for me to get to an over-under is a lot of work, whereas like stacking or Toriano pass or knee cutting is better for like the sweeps that I use, right? So Lange's game had a lot more usable information for me than certain other people,
Is he a Brazilian or is he American?
Yeah, he's actually Cobrinha's first black belt.
That's right.
Yeah, Lange's, I want to say he's the kind of main guy at Alliance Sao Paulo. I think he's the head professor there. But yeah, just incredible guard. Like, one of those guards in an era of, different phases and fads. He was playing sleeve control through many generations, and he and Lucas Lepri closed out a lot of divisions. So a lot of the titles that either one of them would have won, they would bow out because they're on the same team and stuff. So,
oh, okay,
wow.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always said like the perfect mix would be Lange's guard and Lepri's passing, but then later in Lepri's career, he's showing his guard off more, and it's obviously equally effective. It's just a different style. It's more like what I call like butt wrestling, where it's like you come up on singles from the guard. Which I think is probably a little more universal. I think everyone can do that.
That sit-up guard.
Yeah, sit-up guard using, X, stuff like that, where it's more like it's the hard part's not really setting the guard up, it's coming up, the athleticism to come up on the single and finish, whereas most of Lange's sweeps were some type of overhead sweep, like the balloon sweep or an omoplata or something more entangled.
So COVID, we brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I mean, when you think about being lucky to live in Tennessee and not have our businesses shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, not saying that we weren't all shut down for a little bit there, but, that was some scary moments, very scary moments,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Manhattan when it all started, and I was, like you guys know, I was in the process of negotiating a lease on a commercial space to open a gym in lower Manhattan. Of course I was excited about it. I was like, oh, this is great. And then all of a sudden the news started coming in, this virus. And at the time it was just, it was only in China, but,
And that was one of the worst places it hit in America, right?
Yeah.
I mean, New York was a crapshoot.
Right.
We left, my wife and I left, I think in April. But we were quarantined. She was quarantined a lot longer than I was. And it's funny because I tell people in Tennessee quarantined. Oh yeah, I was quarantined too. I was like, no, going to Home Depot every 5 minutes is not actually a quarantine. No, I saw you, at the grocery store. But no, when I say quarantine, I mean in a New York condo, which, obviously is not a ton of space, not leaving for anything. Like, we didn't go outside, all the common spaces are closed. Then, I was going crazy. I was probably, me personally, maybe 4 weeks. My wife was in there a lot longer. And, we rented a car. I walked, like 20 blocks to find a car rental place that was actually open. Rented the car and we drove straight back to Tennessee, and it's just a different world. You come down here, it's like, I don't know if I believe in that virus or not. I'm like, the whole city is shut. I'm pretty sure that's real. It's science.
I never, throughout that whole time, I never heard anybody go, oh, those guys grappling shouldn't be doing that. Like, that's, shaking their fingers. One, it could be because they're scared to talk shit to the grapplers, but it could also be because, it's like we're kind of already quarantining because we don't go anywhere except jiu-jitsu and home. So
That's
it's
true.
kind of a
not the
big
most
quarantine
bunch,
training fest.
Now, I do remember, I think Tom DeBlas and Keenan got into it a little back and forth over like, we're still training jiu-jitsu strong.
Yeah.
And Keenan was like, hey, don't get us all in trouble, guy.
And then Tom was like, I'm going to fight you in MMA.
Yeah. He's like, what?
It's like, wait.
It's not what I was saying.
Yeah.
Wasn't the intention.
But he made the mistake of posting that, hey, everybody's taking a break from training for a couple weeks, and, he's posted pictures of him and Gordon Ryan and everybody training, and it's like, it's just bad time.
Yeah, that was the tough part. It was like, as a business owner, it's like, it's not just, do you get rent relief? It's you literally shut down your entire marketing.
Yeah.
You stop building your business, and like in the cliche, you're either growing or you're failing. Yeah. There is no, we're just going to pause and my business is going to magically stay the same. And it's like half your students think you're barbaric for not closing and swearing off everything, and then the other half think you're drinking the Kool-Aid if you even wear a mask. And it's like, can we just agree that we're all adults, and like, it's, if you don't want to come, don't come.
Play at your own risk.
I'm not, at no point was I around at-risk people. It's like, it's my wife and I'm not like going to see elderly people on the weekends or anything. And, at the end of the day, we did close for a while, and, our community, our students support us, to an amazing degree, which is awesome. But there's, the churn, right? There's like how many people you're losing each month per gaining. We lost the same amount of people, but we just didn't gain anything for 6 months. So it's like, everybody paid, which is awesome, but we went backwards. We were having a really good year, and of course I was in the process of selling that gym, and so it was like everything was tough, but for me, I think, I don't know, I think there's two ways of looking at it. It's like you can throw your hands up and think you have no control of the situation and get mad and like, bitch about politics or whoever or whatever, or you can just realize that it's going to happen whether you like it or not, and you just adapt, and it's like, if anything jiu-jitsu should tell you, it's just to take your ass kicking, keep going, and adapt.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I had friends of mine that are gym owners, and it was like one of two scenarios. Either they're like, bring it, like, I'll grow through this, I'll we'll start online classes, we'll adapt and overcome, versus the, they're gonna shut us all down. And I'm just like, that's not, you realize that mindset is going to fail whether the government makes you fail or not.
Yeah.
Like COVID can't actually close you down permanently. It's just a temporary thing. But yeah, the optics was the hard part. It's like what Keenan, when he went out there, it's like, yeah, Keenan, you make most of your money online. Like, let's not get this twisted. When you closed your gym down, you didn't close your website down. So he kind of, in a way, punked people who didn't invest in the online thing like he did in the instructionals, and like, oh, you need to close down. I'm closing down too. But get on Keenan, and it's like, I get it. That's smart. But at the same time, it's like, you can't throw your own community on blast. We had guys in local area that were like, screw COVID, everybody come train at our gym, and when everybody else is closed. And I'm like, I I could easily get online and put you on, but I'm not. You know, it's like you got to.
Which is not the right way to go either.
No, you got to feed your family, and if my students go to your gym and switch, then that was best for them. You know, I can't like be mad at somebody for being like, well, you closed for a month, so I'm just done with you. And it's like, well, if we weren't, clicking, then go, be happy somewhere else.
They would have left anyway, though, to be honest with you. They were just looking for
every
a reason.
gym's got its own, atmosphere and vibe, and, you want your students to be happy, you should.
Well, definitely, big thanks to everybody who has continued to support their jiu-jitsu academy during this, no doubt. And especially those who didn't want to train but wanted to continue to support. Like, that's huge, and we're hopefully looking forward to seeing all of those people return in 2021.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had a lot of people in the in healthcare that obviously for a lot of reasons we're not coming around, and it was great to hear from them, and like they were reaching out like, hey man, I can't train right now, but if you need anything, and some of them are getting vaccinated, so they'll be coming back in over the next few months, which is exciting. And we've noticed that like people come back and it's like, oh man, what changed? Like, I actually got COVID from my kids, so I've already had it. So I'm gonna, like, I've got antibodies. I'm just gonna
good
train,
for 3 to 5 months. Might as well, yeah.
Like the safest place on earth isn't. But yeah, it's funny how like a lot of people just stayed out until they got it. Like, well, all right, I've got to, hopefully I got a few months I can go about life.
So the interesting part is throughout pretty much all of this, I trained. And the only time that I didn't train was maybe
the month of
we were down?
April or May.
Yeah,
I can't remember. 1 month I was like, we're doing complete quarantine for the whole month.
Yeah.
And then once that month passed, I'm not gonna lie, I was just like, well, that's my expiration on quarantine. And when we started back, it wasn't like full blown because there was a lot of people who were still at home. And, but we had to keep up. We had to have a product to continue serving people when they did come back. And
there's people that do jiu-jitsu because it's fun, and there's people that do jiu-jitsu because they don't have anything else. Like, that is literally everything to them. And it's easy for a non-jiu-jitsu person to be like, well, that's dangerous. But I mean, we've got people that are recovering addicts that have been battling depression their whole lives, people that have given up everything, quit college and quit jobs just to be competitors. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's people that need jiu-jitsu, and it's one of those things to take it, and it's like, all right, well,
you just gotta ask anybody, like, what do you hold dear to your heart? What's precious to you? Like, what gets you up out of bed in the morning? And it's like that's what jiu-jitsu is, at least for me. And when it's your livelihood and your family, and it's that's a big, I think, something that's been missed a lot by the social media culture of arguing between like about masks and vaccinations and like the danger of the disease, but not many people discuss like the people that did lose their businesses and
those conversations
the struggles
start up and
suicide
end really quick.
Suicide rates are way up in this country right now. I mean, it's insane. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I always thought it was a little telling that the government shuts all fitness down and not liquor sales. And it's like, if you really care about the health of the country, why don't you just, and don't get me wrong, I drink. So like, I'm not always like, like, oh, I quit drinking 20 years ago, so I hate all drinkers. I mean, I was at home drinking whiskey going, yeah, man, they should probably not sell this stuff because it's not good for you, But like, I love how it's totally fine that McDonald's and all the poison is totally fine, but gyms are dangerous. I'm like, you realize that alcohol will kill you, McDonald's will kill you, obesity, diabetes, yet, this, like, the mortality rate of that is really high, and I mean, if you've ever had to lose weight, like, it's so hard as I'm 44, as a 44-year-old man, like, for me to lose 10 pounds is tough. I can't imagine these people that gained like 50, 60 pounds because their gym was closed and they were already battling, health issues. And it's like the long-term damage of that, is going to be a guaranteed health problem versus,
But I think one thing that the whole quarantine pandemic scenario may bring about is the kind of the mentality of the strong will survive. Because the companies that were barely making it, they're somewhat absorbing possible headcount you can have for your gym. Yep. Well, those facilities shut down and those people are still looking for something. You figure out how to strive during this time, they'll be your survival tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're a business owner and you didn't learn stuff in 2020, you won't be a business owner much longer. You know, like I learned a ton, so much this year about everything in business, community, about like, you think you've built something when you're running a gym and you've given your entire life to it, but then when you see something like this and people stick by you, you realize you did build something. You actually created something valuable, and it was like I actually gained a great deal of confidence as a business owner and as a professor for how much support I got. So it actually motivated me to reinvest in my association and my academies to be like, all right, well, I mean, I was in this already. I mean, I'm 15 years into this, but like apparently everyone else in the academy is in it as well. So that was like inspiring to me,
Yeah, it's funny even here. Like since we moved into this place, Jeff has said, "Hey, I need," and there's at least 4 or 5 guys that'll jump in at any time just to say, "Yeah, I'll move it, I'll get it, I'll do it, man. Whatever you need, boss. We'll make it work together." And
that's awesome.
It's always fun, if nothing else, because we get to pick on Jeff because he's not very technical savvy. Did you electrocute yourself just then?
No, I just.
Did you?
The charger.
Check to see if it was
have
plugged
the
in.
laptop plugged in, and it's got like all these things plugged into it.
Yeah, that would be disastrous.
I would just be like, well, we're gonna take a half hour to fix all this stuff.
Take 2.
But no, I just decided to run out and get the charger really quick, like a maniac. Yeah. Yeah, I need to hire somebody. I need an intern. All right, listen up, America, Jiu-Jitsu community. If you're a young aspiring editor or social media marketer, and you want to intern here with Jiu-Jitsu by the Train Tracks, go ahead and give James a call.
Columbia University is right around the corner. If any of those students are interested and would like to put your degree to use, feel free to give us a call.
Yeah, we'll give you something to do. I don't know your number, man. I'm sorry.
I was about to say your number, but I forgot it. You have no stupid Virginia
If you knew my
numbers.
number by heart, then I was going to be kind of creeped out, to be honest.
You should be. You should be.
Not touched.
You allowed me to train here. You should be creeped out.
That's fair.
All right, so Jeremy, I have a question about your origin story. So I know that you've actually got a really good, what is it, an autobiography when you do it yourself, right?
Yes.
You did a really good job on the one for the website. I'm not sure if you still have it up or not, but
yeah, it's on there still. That was an incredibly awkward process. I'm not the kind of I really don't like talking about like obviously personal stuff.
Sure.
I'm from the generation where you didn't take a selfie. Like the selfie itself is like an absurd thing to me, but it's one of those all right, well, this is, we're a business owner. We're going to do all this weird, awkward stuff. And one of my students actually, Jason was telling me, he's like, man, I was struggling. I was trying to figure out why when we have colored belts transfer to our academy, our retention is so high. Like we keep colored belts to an incredible degree, but we have a lot of turnover white belts. And I was like, what are we doing wrong that we're not bringing people? So we tried everything. We tried intro programs and all this stuff. And he's like, well, why do you think the upper belts stay? And I was like, well, I don't know. And he's like, well, they probably feel connected because they know you. He's like, like a purple belt comes in and you're going to immediately, because they've been doing jiu-jitsu, you have a lot in common. They open up immediately. You know how it is. Like a visitor comes by and 5 minutes, like your family because you do jiu-jitsu. But he's like, a white belt is not part of that yet. So they don't know how to relate. Are they supposed to bow to their sensei? So there's like a lot of uncomfortable interaction. So it takes a long time for them to get to know you. So he's like, maybe you should put something about yourself on the website so people can come in and kind of maybe know a little bit about where you came from and all that. So, Jason inspired me to do that. And of course, my wife, she always edits things to make sure,
make sure that your grammar's on point.
Dropping out of high school would make a great editor, but it
does.
We'll
put a link to that when we upload this. And but on to the more serious, thing I wanted to discuss, which is if you were a superhero, whose powers, like what origin story, or I don't know if you know a whole lot about
Wolverine.
You know what, man?
That was mine for him.
That was mine for me. What? But you know what? I'm gonna let you have it, Jeremy. I'm gonna go ahead and pass on.
I mean, the healing factor. Literally all the dumb stuff I've done, I could do even more dumb stuff, and I would still be, my God. Imagine a jiu-jitsu black belt competitor that has a healing factor.
He was always my favorite growing up. He was a badass.
Yeah, he never got his due until later in the 90s. He started out like as a villain, I think. And
it was like an obscure
character, he was just a random rat-faced dude that they were like, we'll make him fight the Hulk.
The whole Weapon X series and all that stuff was awesome.
Yeah, they did good remaking him into something more tangible.
Did you guys read comics, or did you guys get into stuff?
I did a little. I was into it for a little bit, and it's like Marvel, like when it went Hollywood, I just lost all interest in superheroes. And I know that's because I'm kind of a hipster, and when shit gets popular, I'm just like, you know what, I don't want this anymore. And
everyone's looking now.
But I'm honest about it with myself.
Over Marvel right now.
Okay. No, I was all about it as a kid.
Me too.
I wanted the action figures before they even made them. So I would take comic books and I would cut out the character and play with the sheets of paper that were
That's awesome.
Like it was all I could do. I wanted every single bit of it in my life. I was like, this is
Did you
amazing.
draw at all?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I've kept several of my drawings from when I was maybe 12 or 13. They're halfway decent. My kids like them. That's about it.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Oh, wait. You have them close by. So you've drawn recently.
No, I had to take photos because I don't draw anymore. So it's like one of those
just makes sense, yeah.
I remember, my son was like, wanted me to draw with him.
Shut up. That's freaking awesome, man. Look at that.
You drew that?
Yeah.
Nice, dude.
What did you use?
I started with pencil and then some pastels and then markers.
Man, how long ago was this?
That was maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. And then
that's pretty recent.
That's a drawing from when I was like 15.
Oh wow. Okay, mine
like a grocery sack.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, I drew a picture of my last thing that I remember drawing was a picture of my dad, and it took me probably 30 hours just in pencil. And
they put it up on their fridge.
He did. He actually he actually framed it.
That's awesome.
And I think my mom threw it away not too long ago.
Oh no.
I don't know why. It just disappeared. Nobody can find it.
Huh. That was actually one of my first jobs. Was when I was in high school. I checked out. I mean, I was just there, because I legally had to be there. So I was drawing all the time, and I remember I got in a fight with some guy or whatever, and then the guy, we became friends, and he's like saw me drawing, and he's like, can you draw my girlfriend? So he gave me a photo. So I would charge like $50 to just take a photo and sketch it, and they'd give it to their girlfriends. So like through high school, that was my little
side hustle.
Yeah,
oh wow. So the weird part, I never learned to draw. It wasn't my thing. I just saw a guy drawing in class that one day, and I was like, man, I really wish I could do that.
Yep.
And so I started imitating what I saw him doing with his hands.
That's awesome.
Some people, they draw one solid, consistent line. And he was one of those guys that draws several little connecting lines, and I started copying that, and before I knew it, I'm copying comic book pictures.
Yeah, I started, I remember just being upset. My dad was a civil engineer, so he was always drafting, so he had a big drafting table, and it was cool, mechanical pencils and every kind of thing you could think of. And so I obviously idolized my dad. I had an awesome dad, so I would draw with him, only he's like drawing up these subdivisions and stuff. And I'm like, I'll just draw Wolverine, you know. But like I taught myself how to draw, and it actually kind of screwed me in the long run, because I have a habit of setting my hand down, and I draw with my fingers from the corner out. So then I can't use certain mediums, because obviously paint, you can't set your hand down. So it actually, like when I actually got into like art, you know, like proper, my technique was so bad. And I see that in jiu-jitsu. I see guys that like, you know, like they're super flexible, and it's like a crutch, and they don't learn hip movement because they're so bendy. And then at purple belt or brown belt, they struggle because they didn't learn fundamentals. So I kind of like art and music, I learned without fundamentals, and I saw how I hit a roadblock where I can't really get any better without redoing all of it. You know, same thing with guitar. It's like, I mean, if you were like, all right, you know, play the scale and the key of C, I'm like, why don't you just start playing, and I'm just going to find something that sounds kind of right, you know?
Show me what you're doing with your fingers.
Look, man, I'm just going to drum the G chord for a little bit.
Yeah. Can we play something I've memorized? Because that's easier.
How about you play what I'm playing?
Right.
Jeremy, while you were coming up through the belts and through the ranks in jiu-jitsu, what belt color can you recall? Not obviously black belt's going to have its struggles in its own, because that's the belt you are the longest, right? But
yeah.
White, blue, purple, brown. Which belt do you think gave you the most growth as a person?
On the mat, or like as a person outside?
You can answer both. Yeah, either one.
So on the mat, I think probably brown belt I grew the most. And I'll talk about that in a little bit why. Off the mat, obviously black belt, because I've been a black belt probably longer than, you know, I've been a black belt for 13 years or something. So I would say as a person, white belt, because like I've been in martial arts a long time, and I was, you know, young, athletic, flexible, was too stubborn for my own good. So I would literally let people pop my arm just to where it didn't tap. So I saw success early because I was just had attributes, you know. But at white belt, when I found you, because that was in other martial arts, you know, like in kickboxing, being really flexible, really fast, and training all the time, having good cardio, you don't need to be super technical to be a handful, you know. But I came into jiu-jitsu, and I was like, all right, here we go, super athlete, you know, and I just got trashed. And I remember like going to my first tournament. I didn't want to compete. I was a nervous wreck. And, you know, I went out there, and, you know, I barely won my first match, and it was like just a complete scramble for 5 minutes. We literally went through every position you can think of, and neither one of us scored. We could not hold anything. I remember like Louise like, stop moving. I'm like, oh, jump off to this and that, because, you know, it was all submissions. So I would just jump on stuff and fall off, you know, and me and this guy were just going at it. And I remember at the end of it, they raised my hand. I'm like, oh, I won, you know, and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening, you know. And I was like, okay. And I go in the bathroom to vomit, and my like diaphragm is like completely seized up, and my hands are like, oh, I'm just like, because I had such a huge adrenaline dump, you know, because I was like, I had an ego. Like, I wasn't out there to play jiu-jitsu. I was out there to like prove some, you know, bullshit, you know. Like, I thought of it as like as a street fight. So that's why like I tell my students, like, it's not a fight, it's a game.
Yes.
Because I'd never get nervous playing checkers, you know, but like that, I went out there and I was just like, oh my God, my manhood is on the line, you know. And I was like 25, and, you know, and I'd been in martial arts for 10 years at that point. And so if I was just a black belt in these other styles and I lost to a white belt, then that means all that training was for nothing, you know, in my ego brain. So I'm in the bathroom trying to recover, and I remember somebody was like trying to, you know, massage my forearms, you know, and I was like, that was good, I won. And Louise like, okay, man, the second match, and I was just like, what? Like, no, I won, I'm out, you know, give me my medal, let me go. And I went out there and just got destroyed. I was so tired. And I remember I'd hit the cardio wall where I was like, I'm going to puke on both of us. I'm going to be like one of those YouTube guys. Like, I can't do this, right? So I'm like, and I remember he goes to choke me, and I could have gotten out, like, but I remember thinking, oh, thank God. And I tapped, and I was like, and that shaped me more, that one moment, because I went home, I was like, you bitch. You little, like you, and I mean, he was choking me, so like no one knew except me that I quit.
Yeah.
And I remember like laying in bed, just hating myself, and I'm just like, you suck. And I was like, I'm going to quit. Like jiu-jitsu, I'm going back to kickboxing, I'm going back to stuff I'm good at. Mm-hmm. And I remember like that was on a Saturday night, I was obsessed, and then Sunday I didn't get out of bed. I was just like, oh my God, I failed. And I'm a loser. I didn't even get my medal. Like I was so mad, I was like, I'm leaving. So, and then I was like so angry, and Louise called me like Monday afternoon after the noon class that I normally train in, and he's like, man, where are you? I was like, I don't know, man. I just know jiu-jitsu. He's like, man, you'll come to train tonight. I was like, shit. And I came back, and I was ready for everybody to just be like, oh, you loser. And then everyone's like, hey, man. Hey, what's up, man? Oh, you competed? How'd it go? And I'm just like, wait a minute. That wasn't the most important thing in the world to you? Because,
Yeah.
And then I kind of like started realizing that, I'm the kind of person that puts a ton of pressure on myself. Like no one's standards are higher than mine for me, right? So I started analyzing whether it was pride or ego or fear or insecurity, what was driving me. And I think white belt Jeremy was driven by fear and insecurity, and it's kind of like, you do everything out of either, like fear or love. And it's like I didn't want to be doing jiu-jitsu just because I was afraid to be bad at it, which I think a lot of people do. I think it's why a lot of people quit, is they're afraid to get beat up. That's why I don't sell the self-defense narrative, because it's like if you are coming to me because you think someone's going to beat you up, that's fine. 6 months from now, you'll be bully-proof, go on. But I want you to train forever. Like I want you to find the beauty in jiu-jitsu, not as like some scared person who's terrified of the world, but someone who like looks at jiu-jitsu as like something enriching, and that they can do forever, So like to me that when you get someone in with the self-defense narrative, it's your job as a professor to switch that narrative to growth and not fear, So but yeah, through white belt, I learned probably more about myself. I wasn't a white belt long. I like went through the belts fairly quickly, but like in that time, man, I grew so much, and that's all I've been fighting ever since white belt, was kind of like my own ego and my own identity. And, so that's the reason I train. I really don't train. That's people like, oh, why don't you compete? And I'm like, I don't do it for that, man. Like I think it's beautiful, and I coach. I love coaching competition, but my why is not about other people, so it's like, it's kind of about getting over myself, and I competed, through the lower belts and never enjoyed it. I never got done with the tournament. And said, man, I'm really glad I did that for this weekend, like cutting weight, hating my life, but I'm glad I did it. And like, I'll never promote someone to purple belt that hasn't competed. I just can't even fathom how you could do jiu-jitsu all the way to black belt and never go out there, and I can say that because I hated it. If I loved competing, it would be a little bit kind of hypocritical. You should love what I love. But I'm like, man, I hated it. And I mean, Louise, my professor always, messes with me. He's like, man, when are you going to get, and everybody, when are you going to get out there? I'm like, probably never. I don't know. We'll see.
I bet you we'll see you out there at some point, Jeremy.
Hey, man, maybe I'll go and win like a Master 15 division one day,
Yeah,
I'll tell you, the entire association would shit a brick if you went out there and did something, man. They would
get
just
on
love
that
to
master
watch.
program.
They would just love to watch you out there. I know these guys loved watching me get all nervous and crazy training for this thing.
We watched the tournament on Flow Grappling.
The pants,
We were sitting there texting him the whole time because you and him were standing behind his mat. And while we saw you talking to him, it's like, ooh, look at Jeremy over there reaming Jeff out. So he was like, let's text him, you suck.
Got a lot of support from the school.
We love him.
That's great, yeah.
If we hated him, it'd have been much worse.
Right.
Do your best.
Yay.
We'll love you either way.
Right.
Which I did hear.
Oh, yeah. That's from your wife and kids.
Yeah, man. That's important to hear, though. I probably should have heard that when I was coming up. Oh, man.
Man, that's awesome, Jeremy. I would have never thought that you had that problem with competing. I had the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, I remember my first tournament was Battle for Blue at your school. First of all, I'm in a strange new place.
Yep.
And I've only been trained in 2 months. And who all am I supposed to go against? All of them tonight? Okay, this is going to be fun. I had that exact same adrenaline dump after my first match, and I had to go the whole 5 minutes, and I kid you not, this guy had to have been 21, 22, and I'm 38, 37 at the time. I was like, dude, what am I doing out here? Yep. All I can think is just don't let whatever I'm holding go, because apparently that's going to be bad.
Yep. That's funny. Yeah, I think, I remember asking, every time I have an opportunity to sit down and like get to know somebody at a high level of anything, whether it's jiu-jitsu or whatever, I always ask them certain questions. And every competitor that I've gotten close to, I've always asked them, like, how do you deal with nerves? How do you deal with adrenaline dump? And it's always the one answer that you, as someone who hates doing something that way, it's the worst answer. It's, oh man, you just compete more. It's like, what?
Yeah,
that's exactly it. That's what I try to preach to the people here as well. The more you have to practice competing just like you practice jiu-jitsu in school.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and I absolutely believe that jiu-jitsu has a weird culture still because it's a remnant of this like tribal fight culture from like the Brazilian days where it was like the Gracie school versus lucha libre guys or whatever, and it's like this crazy intense, like you go fight for your flag, but I mean, how long is that going to play out? Like, how long is that narrative important? And is that really taking people the direction they need to go? So like, for example, like if me competing is the goal, why am I teaching? Right? Because you can't do both equally. And
it's a hard lesson.
Yeah, well,
the misconception of like misperception, one of those. Of these other guys who like Cabrina, and then you got Cyborg who was winning everything. It seems like this past year, but they got help, right?
Yeah. It's it's when one of those guys competes. First of all, they have many black belts at their academy, and many high-level black belts a lot of times, or like really high-level purple and brown belts that would be black belts anywhere else. And, when it's time for them to do a tournament, they switch into like athlete mode, and they come. I mean, of course, they're still professors, they're still coaches, they still care about their students, but their priorities shift, and any competitor that tells you being a competitor is not selfish is lying. Yeah. So if you're the type person that I have trouble dialing into my focuses, like my motivation for building Profectus and building a brand and building association is so other people have opportunities. I'm done. Like I could retire and be happy. I would still train, but everything I've done for the last 4 years is literally for other people to have opportunities in jiu-jitsu, right? So for me, competing, like the only reason that I would ever compete would literally just be so that my students could watch it. But at the end of the day, when it's weight cut time and when you're a black belt and your career's on the line, is so someone else can watch it, a real why. Like, I guarantee Gordon Ryan's not out there like, man, my friends are going to love watching this. So it's like, to be an elite competitor, you have to want it. Your why has got to be, something bigger than that, So it's like.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then one day, maybe I'll wake up with a different why. Like, maybe one day I'm able to just, like, tap into that. And, I'm also not the kind of person that does things halfway. So, like, if I'm going to compete, I'm going to train like an athlete, and I'm going to live like an athlete, and I'm going to, I'm not going to sit on the mat for an hour talking to people about their kids. I'm going to go take a nap or go eat something. And so it's like, I think that there's of course value to doing both, and I think it's super impressive when people can be a professor and a competitor. But it's two jobs, and it's like most people's best days are either before they're a professor, or if you notice, they peak again later after they've built people to run their gyms. But that first few years, that's really where it's a grind, especially if you're not a world champion. It's hard to run a gym quickly. You don't just open, like if you're a world champion, you open up in a neighborhood and there's 15 other gyms, you're going to get all their best guys. So, like, you plug and play a bunch of upper belts, like a lot of these guys, in the U.S., their upper belts are all transplants from other places, you know, and it's like, you know, like Atos for a long time, it's like, you know, yeah, Atos has got Keenan and JT and all these guys, and none of those guys started at Atos, right? So, but when you're not a world champion, when you start a school, you start from the ground up with brand new white belts. So you don't even have training partners for probably the first 5 years, really. And then your training partners, even if they're really good, are they world level black belt good? Do they have answers for everything? So, you know, for me to train to compete, I'd have to travel. You know, I'd have to put myself through a ton of physical work and all that. So, you know, whereas some people can just jump in a tournament and have fun. And I think that's awesome. I'm super jealous of that. You know, but
I think local tournaments, you know, could be easier for some, but if you're a school owner, still, it's you know, it's a touchy thing. You know, I mean, there's a lot on the line when you put yourself out there and you're trying to make a living doing this. You know.
Yeah, and so I think that's kind of what goes back into the preparing, right? It's like, okay, if this is my career and I take it seriously, if I'm going to go represent my career in a tournament, I'm going to be really ready, you know, versus if I was a hobbyist or if I was, you know, a teacher at someone else's academy, you know, then it's just, you know, it's something you enjoy and all that. But yeah, I always felt like for me, like, okay, can I afford the time away to focus on it? Is that something I value? Is that something I want to put my wife through? You know, stuff like that. And if you know me well enough, you know how neurotic I am. So I'm sure my wife can vouch for that. So I'm sure she'd love me cutting 20 pounds to be relevant in the tournament.
Anything else, other topics that we'd want to discuss here? We're about an hour in. We've got a lot of good stuff here.
We had an old one. I don't know if you wanted to touch on it.
What's that?
How not to get promoted.
Oh, how not to get promoted.
Yeah.
So give me some context there. Right?
Oh, now you're looking at
No, well, I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off, Jeff.
Look, go ahead.
So we anytime we think of a topic, we write it down, or Jeff does, and one of them was around age. We talked about that last week, and we had this one in our back pocket thinking, like, maybe Jeremy's a good person to ask on it. So
you're saying, like, the way you don't want to be promoted, like...
No, more so the guy that wants
what about the guy
to
who really
get
wants his
promoted,
next belt,
and he's
not sure
it's
why.
just not happening. Well, there's a couple reasons for that.
Yeah, I think this obviously is different for different gyms. Like I came from a traditional martial arts background originally, where if you asked your instructor about a belt promotion, you guaranteed you were never getting promoted. It was like, you don't speak of that, right? So I think some people come from like traditional martial art backgrounds where, and I don't mean like traditional commercial arts, I mean traditional arts, you know, and they come into it and they're scared to ask their coach or the professor, you know, whatever the case. And I think that, to be honest, if you're paying someone money to teach you jiu-jitsu and they won't let you ask questions, go to a different gym. Like, I love it when people ask me, like, what do I need to work on? Because honestly, I'm kind of waiting for some people to ask me that, because that's part of the problem, is they don't have a realistic sense of where they are.
If you tell them without them asking for it, they're less likely to take your suggestions.
Not going to be absorbed.
Yeah, sit down and tell your teenage kid how they're screwing up in life and shit like that, you know. But and you know, like, if jiu-jitsu is a very deep tank, you know, there's a ton of information, and a lot of it's not good. You know, like YouTube is full of a lot of great jiu-jitsu and a lot of really bad jiu-jitsu. So, you know, you get guys on Reddit reading forums where other white belts are giving white belts advice because they heard from a blue belt. And I'm like, and, you know, like a lot of black belts just avoid it because they don't want to get into these internet wars, you know. But the reality is, you know, like, if you're not being promoted and you're scared to ask your professor, you know, that's a problem. You should ask them. And if your professor gives you the standard, you need to keep training, you know, then that's just what you have to do. I mean, it's ultimately, you know, your coach or instructor or whatever is seeing your progression or lack thereof. I would challenge instructors to have a better answer. You know, like, I mean, I had a talk with, you know, someone not too long ago, and they were, you know, asking me, you know, what do I need to work on? And I'm like, you're just not competitive enough. Like, you're an upper belt, and you don't really ever represent your belt. I don't know how good you are because you never go hard. And the reason they don't go hard, it's like a ghost over there?
Oh, no, man.
But, the reason he doesn't go hard is because he's out of shape. And obviously when you exert, you're left on empty and then you lose. So there's so some people have to calm down. Some people have got to wake up. I'm a huge fan of a nerdier style of jiu-jitsu. I can't stand when people's answers are attribute related. Oh man, so-and-so beat me, but he's so much stronger than I am. Wrong.
Yeah.
So-and-so, but he's so flexible. Wrong. It's not about, there's guys way better than me, way more flexible, way stronger, all that stuff. But that has nothing to do with if I'm failing or succeeding. That's all on me. If you beat me and you're heavier than me, I did something wrong. It's not because you're bigger. If anything, that's what jiu-jitsu is for, right?
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of people are always looking outside. What's my professor's fault that I'm not a blue belt? And it's I've had students, quite a few, leave because they didn't get promoted. And it's, ironically, none of them have ever asked me. They just left because they probably, once again, got on the internet and read something about some sort of curriculum kata that they were going to do. And, and it's and two, honestly, with a small enough school, I go a lot by what everyone else is saying. When one of my purple belts comes to me, it's man, when is that dude getting his blue belt? It's probably a good indicator you're close to blue belt. Or when a black belt's man, that guy, he rolls like a purple belt, man. When's he getting his purple belt? And if you have the upper belts, if they're close enough, that should be going on in the background. And then, sometimes because you want, maybe I'm seeing it through a personal lens. Maybe I know you really well and I know that you've overcome a lot. But then this other guy's just judging your jiu-jitsu and he's whoa, he's not ready. And you're oh man, but I really like this guy. So, it's good. I think for me, I like to have back and forth with, other people. Hey, what do you think they need to work on?
In a promotion, it's should be in line with what their goals are through jiu-jitsu, 100%. Right?
Yeah, I think goals, I think there's a standard, right, for everybody. There's a standard level proficiency of jiu-jitsu that everyone can do. And then that's way down here, right? And then there's what everybody wants to be able to do. I don't expect everyone to be flexible. I hope they try to be flexible, but, for their own health. But, not everybody can bolo. Not everybody can play sleeve control. Not everybody wants to train in the gi. Not everybody wants to learn a heel hook. It's there's a million ways to go about it. But, for me, I think each belt has its requirements. I think the sign for me of a blue belt, someone going from white belt to blue belt, is they have an understanding of the vocabulary, the language of jiu-jitsu. If you're hey man, what are you struggling with? It's not, oh, man, this guy's really strong and he squeezed my head and I kicked my legs, and you're what? What are you talking? When they're man, I'm just having trouble retaining my guard. I'm having, when people get under my legs, I'm just not, I don't have an answer. That's the kind of self, awareness that a blue belt has to me, especially in our academy, because we do talk about jiu-jitsu a lot. It's not just, a fitness class. So whereas other gyms, it may be different. If there's an MMA gym, maybe there's a different curriculum. There's a different idea or focus.
Do you feel I feel there's a common standard for each belt, white belt's all about survival. And I'm taking this from the Jiu-Jitsu University book.
Yeah.
But blue belt's escapes, purple belt's your guard, brown belt's top game, and then your black belt's kind of refining and actually submission focused in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I read that from a book, and I also saw something the Gracies had put out that said something along similar lines. Is there anything you have to add to that kind of?
Yeah. So
whether you agree or disagree.
Yeah, no, for me it's a little different because my personality. I'm an aggressive person. I'm an offensive minded person. I don't react to things. I like to, be proactive. So for me, I think if I was going to tell you what each belt meant, technically not from a, personality growth standpoint, would be a white belt should focus on guard retention. Period. Blue belts should focus on guard retention more and sweeping from the guard and back takes. And purple belts should focus on connecting all of the retention, all of the guard attacks to sweeping, stabilizing the top positions, finding themselves in more, offensive situations like, attacking the back, transitioning to different submissions. I think for me, purple belt's the offense belt. It's when everything starts clicking and you get really dangerous. And then at brown belt, I think people should focus on passing, stabilizing, pressure in the gi. And then no-gi, I think brown belt is when you go back, and if you're like not really no-gi focused, you should balance your game. Some people like just don't like no-gi, but I'm not going to give someone a black belt that doesn't do no-gi ever. It's just not how it's going to happen. So I think brown belts should focus on whatever they were neglecting. It's kind of like, all right, you're about to be a black belt. Did you leave anything out? Yeah. Well, I don't know a heel hook. Well, you need to fix that. Or I don't like to wrestle because it's hard. Well, you're going to fix that. So like, one of my black belts, Andy, always jokes and says like the brown belt is like the waiting room. And it really is. It's like there's still some last minute tweaking, and I think defense is in the brown belt for me. I think that guard retention is the most important thing early on, because guard retention fixes a lot of the escape questions. Like, how do I get out of mount? Well, yeah, there are mount escapes, and they do work, especially on uneducated grapplers. Like if some dude, from Costco comes in here and mounts me, I hope that I can probably get out, right? But if, a world champion mounts me, it's probably done, right? So where I stand a chance is in guard retention. So it's kind of like that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I don't train jiu-jitsu to be in bad positions. I train jiu-jitsu to be in good positions. So I think early on, the DNA of a white belt that's built off of not accepting bad positions creates a couple of things. One, in a self-defense situation, they're not going to lay down. They're going to fight. They're going to have a lot of experience in really hard roles. From a sport position as a competitor, you don't win white belt tournaments getting out of bad positions typically. So, I focus a ton on offense. But where the defense comes in is later, for me. Like with our purple and brown belts, I'd expect them to have really high level defense. But yeah, so I'm kind of backwards from a lot of schools.
I get that though, because now that I'm thinking back on it, it's like you're right. Like guard retention kind of helps to solve the problem of escapes.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
I think if I always joke and say if I could gift you a few superpowers for jiu-jitsu, it would be this: an impassable guard, right? The ability to attack the back and finish from the back, and the ability to get to and finish single legs. Like, if that's all you knew and you're really good at it, you would be a handful, But most people lose in their lack of ability to keep people from passing their guard. So if they get taken down, if they get swept, because that's the thing. It's like, I play on top. Oh, well, they're just going to sit down for you all the time? It's like, well, no, but I got this one takedown. It's like, you realize there's like Division I national champions out there that like that one thing is laughable. So, you have to plan on fighting from your back, and that's jiu-jitsu. To me, the first 5 years of jiu-jitsu should be spent on your back. Majority, I'd say like a 70%. And eventually your guard gets so hard to pass that you're able to sweep or submit, but preferably sweep. You get to the top, and now because you're on top so much, because your guard's so good, your passing naturally gets better. People don't like their guards to be passed, so they turtle. Yeah. You find yourself on the back, and all of that groundwork you build at white and blue belt, you're going to finish from the back, and you're going to match the statistics at high-level black belt matches versus spending the first 5 years working on the perfect mount escape. That reality is mount escapes, and once again, for tournaments, don't score. So it's like you may be the hardest guy in the world to submit, but you didn't win the thing you paid to win. So you know, and self-defense too. I mean, I've been in fights, like real fights, not like slap boxing stuff, but like you don't want to be on the bottom.
No.
And, you know, the whole idea of like some uneducated fighter putting a jiu-jitsu purple belt on their back is highly unlikely. You know what I mean? Like that video of Ryan Hall double-legging the guy in the diner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we could all agree that's not what Ryan Hall got to black belt doing, but he's a black belt. Of course he knows how to take people down. That goes back into tactics, you know. So that's my 2 cents or 5 cents on
I like that.
Jeremy, thank you so much for coming out here today, man.
Yeah,
we got cameras turning off now. James is just cut off, and I know he's going to throw a fit.
That's yours. This is mine here.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, like, your beautiful face is not going to be present.
Whoa, careful.
Just towards the end there, yeah. Crash. Yeah, there's this one episode not long ago where I like tried to kill a fly in the middle of us talking, and
it's hilarious.
Everything just crashed. And it was
awesome. If you haven't watched it, enjoy it. It's
that's awesome.
Golden moments.
Guys, thanks for your continued support. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like. I'm not supposed to hit the table because it shakes the camera. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jeremy.